everybody. You okay?
Yeah.
You all set? Closer?
You're fine. I'm going to keep the mic close to you.
We became aware this afternoon of serious weather moving through the state of Indiana, monitored that, and we now been in touch with our emergency operation personnel, and serious weather and tornadoes have touched down. We are not aware of any serious injuries or fatalities, thankfully, but as soon as we arrive on the ground, I'll be traveling to the Emergency Operations Center for a full briefing and have more information for you at that time. The storm system has not left the state of Indiana yet, so this is a real-time event that we're monitoring very closely. But our hearts go out to the families of the communities that have been affected, the homes and the businesses that have been impacted by this. We are thankful that there are no reports of serious injuries or fatalities, but very confident in our local first responders. Indiana is no stranger to tornado damage and tornado activity. In the course of the last several years, we've sadly seen this kind of an event, even in Kokomo, Indiana, just a few short years ago. But I've seen our first responders in action. I'm very confident that the work that's going on at this very hour, we can all be proud of. And when we arrive on the ground, we're going to make sure that the state of Indiana is providing all appropriate support to our local first responders and to the families affected by this storm. But as governor of Indiana, I have no higher priority than the safety of the people of our state. And so we're headed home, and we're going to be home so long as it takes for us to make sure that these communities have the resources and the support that they need to put themselves back together after these very violent storms.
Oh my gosh, Starbucks just got blown over. There's people in there.
I got a text on my phone saying that there was an emergency alert that it was going to hit about 3:30 to take shelter. So we got all our cats down in the basement, and we were looking out the window, and right across the cornfield, a tornado touched down. So we hit it for the basement, and it was crazy. Like, our roof got ripped up. You could hear everything that was going on outside.
It didn't seem very long. I mean, most of the time we were on our phones talking to people, making sure everyone was okay, which they were for the most part. Just, you know, nerve-wracking.
Dozens of people are dead after a 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck central Italy overnight, sending people fleeing from their homes and running into the streets. Rescue crews are working to dig out survivors from the rubble in the hardest hit towns of Amatrice and Accumoli, about 80 miles northeast of Rome. The mayor of Amatrice has thanked rescue workers for rescuing dozens of people and has made a statement saying the town no longer exists. Tremors were felt across a huge portion of Italy, including Rome, where aftershocks reportedly reached a magnitude of 5.5.
The earthquake struck at 3:30 in the morning. Shallow and strong, it shook a wide belt of central Italy, downing buildings and trapping people under debris. One of the worst hit towns was Amatrice in the province of Rieti. Terrified residents were woken from their sleep and ran onto the streets for safety. Rescue teams are going from door to door, climbing over rubble in search of life. With the arrival of day, the damage has become clear. Homes torn up, towers crumbled, the main square in ruins. The mayor says half his town is gone. The quake sent aftershocks, which could be felt as far away as the capital Rome, some 170 kilometers away from the epicenter. Many small villages and towns in the regions of Umbria and Lazio are without power. One resident in Umbria says his village was largely spared because it had been fortified to withstand tremors.
In Norcia village, no problem to people, no problem in the hotel, but all the people for sure has been out this night in the main square of Norcia.
Relief efforts are in full swing, with national memory still fresh of the last major quake in L'Aquila 7 years ago, killing more than 300 people. Gerald Tan, Al Jazeera.
Government officials say at least 3 people were killed in the quake. Several Buddhist temples were damaged in the ancient city of Bagan, a major tourist destination some 30 kilometers north of the quake's epicenter. Tremors could be felt as far away as the country's largest city, Yangon, and the Thai capital, Bangkok. It was also felt in neighboring India and Bangladesh.
We know as of now. Just showing you the picture of the latest earthquake in Myanmar. And as we speak, I think USGS is reporting that this was about 25 kilometers west of Chowk. 25 kilometers west of Chowk in Burma. Now, this is the latest information that I'm picking up from Myanmar, from the USGS website of the latest quake that measured 6.8. In fact, I'm just trying to open this bit of information that has been just flashed by the USGS website.
People here in Patna again felt mild tremors, and I'm here at my office building to the Times of India, and people have thronged in large numbers in the office premises, and that goes to show that the people have come.
God, there's just an earthquake. There's just an earthquake. Oh my God. I was on my bike, this dog was coming at me, and all of a sudden the dog just stopped in his tracks and looked at the temple, and I felt the ground go up and down. And I look over, and this temple just crumbled. It was like a disaster movie, you know? That's not real. Look at that. Look at that. That used to have a top to it, and it fell forward. And look how the whole front of that is just gone. You can see the damage, so.
With the possibility of a storm striking South Florida, emergency operations officials are urging everyone to be on alert. News Channel 5's Alyssa Hyman live now. The Palm Beach County EOC with their advice for people who have never experienced a storm and those who have. Alyssa?
Kelly, the people who will man this operations center behind me say they are prepared for anything that will happen, and they want you at home to be ready too. Delray Beach mom Melva Ring is making sure she has all the essentials.
Some water, canned goods.
We found her at the grocery store stocking up. She's taking no chances getting ready for anything that might happen in the tropics.
That's why I'm preparing myself now to try to make sure I get everything I need just in case, because we don't know how it's going to really turn out.
And that's exactly what Palm Beach County Emergency Management Director Bill Johnson is advising everyone to do.
The time to get all of these plans and kits ready is not hours before a hurricane strikes us. So please get ready, get prepared, do it now.
And here at the Emergency Operations Center, they're doing their own preps. The center is still in its normal phase of operations, still actively monitoring the situation.
We're very closely monitoring the storm. We're involved in conference calls with the National Weather Service and our State Emergency Operations Center. We're reviewing our plans, we're working with our stakeholders.
But depending on how the disturbance develops, Johnson says the level of activation could go up to level 3, enhanced monitoring, and that could happen as early as tomorrow. And Johnson says he will meet with his staff again tomorrow to assess and continue to monitor
Florida,
the situation.
as you know, one of the big stories is Zika. and a new case of the Zika virus popping up in Tampa Bay. And there are 4 new cases in Wynwood, a district where previous cases have been reported. But I believe the governor is going to tell us a little bit more about that. Governor Rick Scott is joining us from the state of Florida. He's also chairman of the Trump Super PAC, Rebuilding America Now, so we'll get a little bit to that as well. But let's start with Zika, and let's just get clarity on it, Governor Scott, because as we see the new headlines of new cases, we want to know exactly what's happening. So you have this case in Pinellas County, which is away from the Miami area that we've been focused on. What are the new cases that you're dealing with in Florida?
Sure. So yesterday we announced a case in Pinellas, which is just south of Tampa Bay, Pinellas County. Today, a new case, non-travel related, in Palm Beach County. So what we do when we have a case like that, we go and we do an investigation to see, if there's any local transmission. So to date, we have a total of 43 cases that are non-travel related in the entire state of over 20.6 million people and over 60 million tourists already this year. We have 2 areas, both in Miami-Dade County. One area now that is down to half a square mile where we think there's local transmission, although we have not seen any new local transmitted cases in over 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then we just announced on Friday, Miami Beach, we've got a 1.5 square mile area where we believe there were 5 cases of local transmission. And so we do very aggressive mosquito abatement. We start testing to make sure to see if there's any other local transmission. So we have very good mosquito control boards, county health departments. Now, here's what's frustrating. The federal government's not been a partner. I've got requests into the CDC. We need more Zika antibody test kits. The federal government, the CDC, is the only one that can provide those. They've only given us a portion of our last one. And then I also need more lab support from the CDC. 10,000 Zika prevention kits for our pregnant women.
Let me just stop you there.
Pregnant women all free test kits.
Because what you're saying is really important. The data is so crucial, and having accurate data is so imperative. So are you dependent on the federal government for accurate data to know exactly what's happening in the state of Florida?
We have some individuals that have come down for the CDC, but no, we're doing our own. We've tested over 30,000 mosquitoes, and we haven't found any yet with Zika. We do that ourselves. We do rely on the federal government for Zika antibody test kits. Now, we do our own lab work ourselves. We do want the federal government to help us with Zika prevention kits for our pregnant women. We are giving every pregnant woman in our state a free assessment and test if they want it at every county health department. So I've allocated state dollars, over $26 million so far. We'll do more if we need to. But the federal government, think about it. I asked for a plan from FEMA, and they still haven't given it to me.
Well, it's a big concern for really any family out there. As our viewers know, I have a 4-month-old at home. When I was pregnant, Zika was an issue. And quite frankly, it was very difficult to get tested for Zika. You had to show that you traveled. You had to have symptoms. Not everyone has symptoms. And I was curious about that because I have friends in Florida who are pregnant who had a very similar experience about whether or not they could get the test and whether or not the testing is conclusive. And so what is your real concern about the data? Do you have concerns about the data that you're looking at to get an accurate picture of what's happening?
Well, it's not just the test. It's also, look, you're not going to get Zika if you haven't been around somebody that had, you've got to get bitten by somebody, or it can be transmitted by sex. That's how you can get it. So we do the assessment and the test together, and that's how we determine. That's what we have to also do to determine if there's any local transmission.
All right, welcome back. A miraculous recovery. This is our health lead today. A 16-year-old boy is alive after being infected by brain-eating amoeba. The parasite is so deadly that it leads to a 97% fatality rate. Doctors today identified Sebastian De Leon as the 4th known survivor in the United States ever. The teenager was vacationing with his family in Florida when he was infected. Now doctors say they're optimistic about his recovery.
We woke him up and we decided to take the breathing tube out, and within hours he spoke. Sorry, he's walking, he's speaking. I saw him this morning. He's ready to go home. I don't know if I want him to leave yet, but he's ready to go home.
All right, here are some facts. The amoeba lives in warm, freshwater lakes and rivers. It flourishes in places like Florida. So much so that if you were to scoop out a handful of water in a lot of places there, you would likely have grabbed up some of the brain-eating amoeba also. But actual infections are rare, with only about 8 cases a year. Until now, the only other to survive in the U.S., a case in 1978, 2 children who survived in 2013. Kaylee Hardig was one of those survivors. She was 12 when the amoeba infected her brain after swimming in contaminated water at an Arkansas theme park. That year, an 8-year-old boy also survived, but he suffered permanent brain damage. And then there's the case this year. For more now on how this young man survived, I'm joined by Dr. Corey Aber. He's a professor at Louisiana State University, also Tulane. First off, Dr. Aber, thanks so much for being with us. When you hear brain-eating amoeba, when you hear about these deadly infections, how do you know if you have one?
Well, I tell you what, it does make you feel very scared, like if you go swimming in the lake, you're going to get this. But you have a bigger chance of getting hit by a car and dying from that accident than getting this. I mean, it's just like a general infection that you might feel like if you had the flu. You would get a headache. You'd get vomiting, some diarrhea, some neck stiffness. That's one of your first major things that you would feel if you're going to have this particular amoeba. And also, you start getting a seizure, coma, all these types of things that would lead you to think that if I was swimming in a lake very recently, then I need to get checked out immediately because it's a very obviously fatal illness.
So 97% fatality rate, Dr. Aber.
Sure.
And in fact, 3 other people who caught it this year, they died. So why then did this boy survive?
Well, you know, it had to be a perfect or imperfect storm, however you want to think about it, because a lot of people get exposed to this. I mean, the CDC did a study in 2009 that actually showed that a lot of people have antibodies to this because they get exposed to it a lot. But everybody's antibody response to different types of organisms, viruses, and bacteria a little bit different. So the thing that probably saved him is the amount of that amoeba that got into his nose, that got into his brain, had to be relatively small, and his antibody titers had to be relatively high for him to actually survive. But some of those things can still even be variable and you still wouldn't survive. So he's just a very lucky young man.
So a lot of us have antibodies because, you know, it's alarming when you find out that this amoeba is in the water, and quite often you're just swimming in it and you don't even know.
Exactly, and that's the reality. And we find that this affects mostly teenage boys. Why? Because teenage boys are a little bit reckless. So what do? They are in high impact water sports, which means when you hit the water, that water is forced up your nose. So anything that you would have that would force water up your nose puts you at risk. That's anything from hot springs or diving in water or any type of water sport, or even actually using one of those sinus rinse bottles if the water has not been sterilized. We had a couple of cases from one of those sinus rinse bottles. So those aren't bad things to use. We just need to make sure that the water is sterile before you use it.
So aside from not swimming or using one of those sinus bottles, what can you do to prevent infection?
You know, I would tell people, really, you know, you kind of look a little bit, you know, odd if you use a nose clip when you're swimming in a lake. But if you're not going to use a nose clip, you really should avoid going under the water at any point with high pressure. And that's the only thing you can do. But you got to remember, this is very rare. But in medicine, we talk about things that are odds. So, you know, if it's 1,000,000 to 1 odds, but that one person is you, it's 100% in your house. So I just tell people, try to avoid that at all costs, just going underneath that water, because that amoeba gets into your nose, up to your olfactory nerve, into your brain, and it eats away at your brain. I know that sounds really awful, but that's actually what happens.
We are so thankful that God has given us the miracle through this medical team and this hospital.
Sebastian and his family were visiting Orlando, visiting a local theme park, when Sebastian developed a severe, intense headache. A headache so severe that he couldn't tolerate people touching him. They tested the cerebrospinal fluid, and it came back positive for the amoeba, what we call Naegleria fowleri, which is also known for the brain-eating amoeba. All efforts, team efforts in our hospital, worked together to seek the newly approved drug by the manufacturer that is actually located here in Orlando. Within 12 minutes, the drug arrived to the front of our hospital. At the same time, my team and I worked tremendously together. We cooled Sebastian. We put a breathing tube down Sebastian to help him breathe. We put him in a pentabar coma. We woke him up, and we decided to take the breathing tube out. And within hours, he spoke. Sorry. Since then, he's done tremendously well. We are very optimistic. He's walking. He's speaking. I have treated amoeba cases in the past. and they're all severely marginal, fatal. So this is a story that we need to tell about Sebastian Guerrero.
Elliot, we begin now with the latest out of Afghanistan at this hour, where militants appear to have attacked American University of Afghanistan, again located in Kabul. Local media there have been airing, among other things, this photo. It appears to show smoke that followed an explosion at the campus. CBS News has confirmed several American professors are trapped inside, along with students. Many, though, are also said to have escaped through emergency doors in the buildings they're in. Several witnesses inside have also reported hearing a series of gunshots. We also have this tweet to share with you from an Associated Press photographer, and it reads, "Help, we are stuck inside a UAF, a shooting followed by explosion. This may be my last tweet."
Again in the early hours, Turkish tanks and warplanes bombed upwards of 100 ISIL positions near the occupied town of Jarablus in northern Syria to clear the path for 5,000 Free Syrian Army rebels to advance. Some 16 hours later, the Turkish president announced its liberation from ISIL control, also known as Daesh.
As of this moment, the Free Syrian Army and residents of Jarablus have taken back Jarablus. They seized state buildings and official institution buildings in the town. Daesh had to leave Jarablus.
The operation, dubbed Euphrates Shield, was Turkey's first major ground assault into Syria since the country's civil war began.
The loss of Jarablus, which is only about 2.5 kilometers behind me here, will be a significant hit to the terrorist organization. They've now lost one of their only remaining supply routes to transit weaponry and fighters in and out of the country.
Jarablus was also the last major ISIL stronghold in the border region. After losing the strategic town, ISIL reportedly fled west towards the Syrian border town of Al-Bab, but Syrian army and rebel forces surrounding the town will make it difficult to enter. Yet Turkey's aim is not only to oust ISIL terrorists from the area, but also to contain the expansion of Syria's Kurds, who now control a large stretch along the Turkey-Syria border. Ankara views the Syrian Kurds Democratic Union Party, or PYD, as an extension of the PKK, the Kurdish separatists fighting an insurgency in Turkey.
The PYD's secret agenda is revealed. Also, those Syrian Kurdish militia forces inside the democratic forces should return to the east of the Euphrates. The U.S. also promised this. This is the deal that we made. We will do what is necessary for Turkey.
On Tuesday, residents of the small Turkish town of Karakamış, just across the border from Jarablus, were evacuated from their homes after the town was hit by 7 mortar shells believed to be launched by ISIL. Meanwhile, late Wednesday, more Turkish tanks were seen heading towards Jarablus, which could indicate the fight is not yet over, for Turkey at least. Natalie Carney for CCTV in Karakamış along the Turkey-Syria border.
Russia has expressed deep concern about Turkey's incursion into Syria, warning it could increase the risk of civilian casualties. Russia's foreign ministry says the operation can, quote, worsen the situation in the conflict zone and flare up inter-ethnic tensions between Kurds and Arabs. The Syrian foreign ministry has also condemned Turkey's military operation as, quote, a breach of Syrian sovereignty. The ministry says any military operation inside a country's borders must be conducted in coordination with Damascus. It also accuses Ankara of trying to, quote, replace Daesh with other terrorist groups. A political wing of the Kurdish YPG militants also reacted to the incursion, saying that Turkey will face defeat in the Syrian quagmire.